reached the Peepal Farm, and today we'll be covering how we have got to know that they have a portal for adoption. So we'll be seeing how this adoption portal is giving a new birth to a lot of animals, and they are reaching to a lot of families. So we'll search out from there. So happy to have you, Joe, with us here, and we were very much inspired by the organization and the work that you started, and we also had a talk with Robin, and he was telling us that you started in 2015 and the backstory of how you landed up here and now the work that you are doing. So I have some questions regarding the adoption portal that you have started. So firstly, we would like to know the history, a little bit of history about how you got inspired to create this systematic pattern of rescuing a street dog to training and then resettlement. So how you got inspired to work?
So basically it's more about necessity than inspiration, because most often when we catch an animal, whether a dog or a cow, we heal them and then we have to re-release them because we don't have enough space to keep on every animal permanently. But there are some, for instance, really young puppies or animals that have like mobility issues where they can't walk properly. And those animals you can't really release back onto the street. And so then what do? Eventually you're going to get too full and you're not going to be able to rescue any more animals. So adoption is basically a way of having an outflow, and it's also a much better life for those animals than they would have on the street.
Exactly. So अभी हम आए पीपल फार्म के डॉग सेक्शन में। तो यहाँ पर ये डॉग्स हैं जो अडॉप्शन के लिए रेडी हैं। तो अगर हम बात करते हैं एक डॉग परचेज़ की, अगर आप मार्केट में डॉग को परचेज़ करने निकलोगे तो वो कम से कम 15 से 20 हज़ार का आता है। फिर अलग से उसकी वैक्सीनेशन, उसकी ट्रेनिंग, उसको टाइम, ये सब देना पड़ता है। वहीं अगर हम दूसरी तरफ एक अडॉप्टेड डॉग की बात करें जो रेस्क्यूड है, तो इनको ऑलरेडी ट्रेनिंग मिल चुकी है, इनका अच्छी तरह प्रॉपर वैक्सीनेशन भी हो चुका है और ये आपकी फैमिली के लिए बहुत ईजिली अडेप्टेड भी है। About rescue dogs is you can adopt them in 24 hours and they can adapt you in a minute. Alright, so the next question that I have is, what all treatment as training has been given to a dog that is being rescued at Peepal Farm? So what all training and vaccination treatment a pet goes through? You
mean like before adoption?
I mean, yeah, before adoption.
Okay, because it's different depending on like whether we're releasing or not. So for the adoptions, they get their full vaccines. So they'll have all of their 6-in-1s and the ARVs and everything like that for rabies. And we make sure that they're as healthy as we can get them. If we know that they have a chronic health issue, obviously we're going to inform adopters about that. And people are prepared walking in, knowing what they're getting into. In terms of training, that really depends on the volunteers we have and how much time I have as well to work with them. As well as the age of the animal, because training is different for like a 6-year-old versus a 2-month-old. Exactly. It's going to be really different.
Right. But you make sure that the dog is healthy and well vaccinated with all the vaccines.
Yeah.
And training as much as it's possible.
Yeah. Training is again variable because it really depends upon more factors than just like, you don't just have to give an injection and that's it. It's like it's an ongoing process. Yeah.
It's a process. So. I would like to know, like for domestic people from India, what is the procedure to apply for an adoption? Like you have a portal and all the dogs and the pets are small animals are listed there. But what is the procedure to proceed further, and how does it make a person or a family qualify to adopt a pet from Peepal Farm?
Basically, they fill out a form. It's a really quick form, and then if it's within one of the areas that we can do adoptions in, then we reach out to them and do an interview. The area is just dependent on whether we have resources in that location to be able to receive the animal back if it doesn't work out, or to be able to do house checks, which is a little tricky during coronavirus. We're doing a lot less of that now, but normally I like to do house checks. So we wait for our volunteers to arrange a check at their house. So the location has to be right to make sure that we have the resources to support them and the animal once they're already placed. And then in terms of screening for homes, we do the interview, and a lot of that is just making sure it's a right fit for that particular animal. I think a lot of times people forget that each animal has their own personality.
Exactly.
So people want this, they want a dog and they want to go for that 2-month-old puppy. But if they're gone 8 hours a day, maybe the 2-month-old puppy is not the good option for them, because puppies are quite a bit of work. So I usually just ask questions to make sure that people understand what they're getting into. That they've already thought about what they're planning on doing for exercise, for training, for feeding, for are the rest of the people in the household on board with it? Because sometimes people, you'll get a 21-year-old call in and then he's still living with his parents and he hasn't even talked to his parents about it yet. And so I'm like, okay, maybe have that conversation first with your parents before you come and before we move forward with this adoption, because everybody really needs to be on board with it in a household.
Exactly, because it's a family thing now. It's a member joining from with this family to another family.
Exactly.
Right. So what are the, I've asked you what qualifies and what are the major reasons that make a family reject for an adoption? You must have gone through a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is when there's not an understanding of just how much work it is to bring an animal in. If someone's like, yeah, they give me one-word answers, they're not really enthusiastic about it. They're I get a feeling that they're like, take it or leave it. Then I'm like, okay, this person's not really invested in this. Or if there's just a huge thing that's not going to work for that animal. For instance, if it's a 2-month-old puppy and they have an 8-hour job, I don't really consider that a good fit, because that puppy being alone 8 hours is going to be an issue for them and the puppy. The dog doesn't want to be alone that long, and then he's going to destroy their house and make a lot of problems for those people too. So just also making sure it's the right match. If they have kids and I have a dog that's fearful around children, that's not going to be a good match. If the dog doesn't get along with other dogs and they have 2 dogs and a small animal, and that dog has a high prey drive, I'm not going to place a dog with a cat that I know is a cat killer. It's just recipe for disaster. So just making sure that everybody's compatible. I kind of look at myself like a matchmaker, but for dogs.
For dogs.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Other than the social condition and other compatibility, is there some economic strata also that you take into consideration while giving it for adoption?
We do have a transportation fee, is what we call it. We don't do an adoption fee, we do a transportation fee. So that all goes straight to the cost of transportation. And basically it's half the cost of getting the dog there. So in Mumbai it's going to be quite a bit larger than it would be for Delhi.
Right.
So whatever half that transportation fee is, we ask for that, but it still usually is somewhat it's an ask. And so if someone goes, ooh, I can't give that much, then I'm like, okay, so what happens when that dog needs to go to the vet and you're not able to shell out 2,000 rupees? You're going to run into a problem, because you're going to need to pay vet bills, you're going to need to buy dog food, you're going to need to do all of this stuff. So I don't say oh, there's a cutoff on the economic level that okay, this person can't do it, but there's definitely a certain standard of care that I'm looking for when it comes to owning a pet.
Right. So it's you who take care of matching and giving with every aspect of a social, economic, and it's you who has to make a good match with the people.
Yeah. It doesn't always work. We have had adoption returns, and sometimes it's stuff that people just don't realize is going to happen, whether it's a behavioral issue that comes up later or the family emergency and suddenly they can't do it. But the key to that is that we, as part of the adoption agreement, when we say, okay, we're ready for adoption, that we sign an agreement, both parties do. And part of that is they have to bring the dog back to us, no matter what. They don't get to just place it with a friend. They don't give it to their cousin. They don't, there's none of that. It's I need to be able to facilitate that rehoming so that I can make sure that, again, the dog is placed in the next best option, and make sure that we don't lose track of that animal too, because if it gets handed over.
You were also talking about the agreement. So what exactly includes in an agreement with a party and with the
very romantic chili.
So what exactly includes in an agreement with the other party? Some documents, the Aadhaar card, or what all documents you take as a valid document for the agreement?
Yeah, so everybody sends in either a driver's license. A lot of our international adoptions, it's just a driver's license. Basically, it needs to have their address on it so that I have a record of their address. And then they sign off saying that they agree to give proper exercise, proper space, that the dog won't be tied for more than X number of minutes. I don't even do hours, I say minutes. I don't mind if you have to tie your dog because you have guests coming over and your dog is reactive with guests. But if it's, you know, your dog is tied all the time, I'm going to say no. Yeah. And that's not a life, you know, that's not something I'm willing to put a dog into. I mean, can you imagine being tied to a pole for your entire life? It's not a life. So that's a deal breaker for me. So it just goes through a lot of that, just making sure that like they understand that the dog needs to get sterilized. If it's too young, that it's not sterilized yet, then that's a requirement for every adoption that people sign off that they will get those dogs sterilized, because accidents happen.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, I would like to know about the other people who are willing to put their dogs for adoption. So it happens a lot of time in the mega cities like Delhi and Mumbai. People are moving out and they have a pet. They also care about it, but they have to move out to some other place, to US or some other place. So in a very short time, they're looking for their pets to be adopted. So the adoption portal that you have made. So what are the requirements that a normal person, if they wants to list their pet on the portal, and how does that work?
Well, if someone actually truly loves that animal and and they're taking all of the expenses to move to North America, you can take your dog with you. Like we send dogs to North America, it is totally possible. So like I usually say like if that's a condition where you're moving and that dog's not coming with you, I wonder how much you actually love that dog, because it's a family member. It'd be like leaving your kid behind. You know, like no one would think to do that. You know, you wouldn't be like, oh well, grandma's kind of old, let's just leave her here. You know, no, you'd take her with. So of course with our pets, that's the same thing. Like if you're moving, there are resources available. If you have the finances to move, you have the finances to like use those resources and bring your pet with you.
But in some cases, while only if they're a single member and he got hit by an accident, there are
I mean there are emergencies for sure, but moving is not an emergency in my opinion.
Totally
but so say someone does need to rehome or someone has rescued and they can't keep long term. We do have like on Peepal Farm's website, that's only Peepal Farm animals, but on Petsy Global, there's like a website that we've built for organizations in particular to use. Individuals can as well, but it's really geared towards organizations who have animals for adoption. And then you just basically go to the bottom of the homepage and sign up. There's like a sign up at the bottom.
Sign up and then you
fill all the information. Making sure you have really good pictures is huge. I think a lot of people underestimate how important the photography is to adoptions. The dog has to be looking into camera, or cat, you know, whatever animal has to be looking into camera. Very clear, in focus, good lighting. If you can borrow your friend's DSLR, do it. Get a volunteer who has a DSLR and have them come in, because that's the first time someone's interacting with that animal is through that photograph. And so if it's not powerful and if it's not full of personality and doesn't showcase that dog, they're gonna go right by it, because you know the next organization is gonna have better pictures. So it's a little bit like advertising, but in this case it's for a good cause. Having those really good pictures is really important for adoptions. And the more animals will get homes, and that's what I want. So even if it's not mine, you know, it's so any animal finding a home is good.
Animal finding a home. So that was all about the interview, to know about the Petsy Global website and the Peepal Farm adoption, the procedure that is included in onto taking a new family member into the family. So I think that's it for the interview.
Do you have anything to add, Chili?
For any other questions that you want to know, you can write in the comment section, and we'll also add the website link of Petsy Global so that you can go list down and share with your friends whichever person is in need to relocate and is in emergency accident cases, and you want your pet to be get a good home, and contact Peepal Farm. And we are so happy to have you for this conversation, so that a lot of people and a lot of animals could find a good home in the coming days.
Yeah, I hope so.
We hope for the best for Petsy Global.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the interview.
अगर इस वीडियो पे लाइक नहीं मिला तो
चलेगा,
कमेंट नहीं आया तो
चलेगा,
अगर शेयर नहीं करा तो
बिल्कुल नहीं चलेगा, बिकॉज इस शेयर का, इस इंफॉर्मेशन का कोई उस तरफ इंतज़ार कर रहा है कि उसको ये चीज़ पता लगे और वो किसी की मदद कर पाए। तो शेयर करना ना भूलें। एग्जैक्टली। बाकी हम कोई यूट्यूबर नहीं है, हम कोई कंटेंट क्रिएटर नहीं है, हम बस ये इन्फॉर्मेशनल कंटेंट बनाना चाहते हैं जिससे किसी की हेल्प होती है इन डायरेक्ट सेंस। तो वी वांट यू पीपल टू डोनेट अस डायरेक्टली। द लिंक्स विल बी बिलो, पेटीएम नंबर, गूगल पे, समथिंग विल बी बिलो है।
तो आपको ज़्यादा अमाउंट डोनेट करने की जरूरत नहीं है। वी वांट एनीथिंग बिटवीन 1 to 10। 10 रुपये से ज़्यादा मत दो।
बिल्कुल
1 रुपये से 10 रुपये के बीच में कुछ नहीं
1 रुपये से 10 रुपये के बीच का कोई भी अमाउंट उसमें जाओ, क्लिक करो और हमको दो, जिससे कि हम लोग ये ट्रैवल करते रहें, अपने एक्सपेंसेस निकालते रहें और हम लोग ये कंटेंट की जर्नी को रोक पाएं।
अभी जो हम चल रहे हैं ना, ये सिर्फ हम अपने एक्सपेंस पे चल रहे हैं, जो हमने थोड़ी बहुत सेविंग करी, जो भी करा है।
और आप वोकल कम्युनिटी को फॉलो कर सकते हैं। इसका इंस्टाग्राम हैंडल है vocal_org। आप चाहें वहाँ पे एक फॉर्म मिलेगा,
vocal_org।
उस फॉर्म को आप भरिए, उस वोकल कम्युनिटी का पार्ट बनिए और आप अपने इश्यूज़ बताइए, दूसरे लोगों के इश्यूज़ रिकॉर्ड करें, उसको डालें और उनके ऊपर एक्ट होगा। ये सिर्फ मीडिया चैनल नहीं होगा जिसके सिर्फ इन्फॉर्मेशन आएगी कि इसके साथ बुरा हो गया, उसके साथ बुरा हो गया। नहीं, बुरा हुआ, हम
सॉल्यूशन
solution
दिया
क्या है?
जाएगा।
सब लोग मिलकर उसके लिए एक सोल्यूशन क्रिएट करेंगे और वो उस तक प्रोवाइड किया जाएगा। तो बी अ पार्ट ऑफ द वोकल कम्युनिटी टुगेदर।